Hey there, Dango Stu here. Today's video is about starting to do a teardown on the Detroit Diesel 471 and is proudly sponsored by MarineEngine.com. So this video was going to be a quick oil change and service on the motor, and it sort of ended up with pistons out, stuck in the sleeves, liners, whatever, all that kind of thing. So enjoy. First thing I do on this motor is take the cylinder head off. The reason for that is there's a little bit of rust around some of the exhaust valves. I can see through the exhaust ports, and when I was giving a bit of a clean up yesterday, I think I got to leave a little bit more water in there, maybe even a little bit of grit, so I'm just going to pull it all apart, get it really clean, and get the head off to be machined while I work on the rest of the motor. I'll tell you right now, I don't know the first thing about Detroit diesel motors. Well, that's not true. I know something about them, but certainly never worked on one before, so got the service manuals. How hard can it be? This is the cylinder head removal procedure. Unfortunately, it's very, very brief with no real diagrams or anything, but we'll figure it out. Drain the cooling system. That doesn't sound too hard. In the other manual here, I found a section on the cooling system. So apparently the trick to draining it is to open the drain valve. Cool, that helps. Ugh. Chunky. Keep these in order, I guess. 1, 2. So you can see in the exhaust port, rusty crap, rusty, reasonably clean, cleaner again. Then here you can see the tops of these cylinders, a little bit rusty, a little bit rustier. Yeah, I think this has all got to come apart. Be surprised if those rings weren't seized on that one. Alright, I'm going to take this little airbox drain off now to get it out of the way too, which will probably help with cleaning it out. Oh dear.
Yeah, I don't know why it's got so much water in it.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
Well, it wouldn't get in through here.
You wouldn't think it would go through the gasket. Yeah, it's got the breather, but that's too much for going through the breather, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but I mean...
Oh well, head off.
Yeah, no, pull it apart then.
Send it
anyway,
off.
if you want to degrease it a bit, have that.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah. No, definitely, that's not just from rain, surely.
No, given it's had a cover over the whole time too.
Yeah, but not only that, it's more likely to be salt water.
Yeah.
So it might have a bit of a leak.
Yep.
No, I think go with your plan, the injectors, do the whole lot.
Yeah, get everything apart.
Yeah. Yeah, no, mine, even that one wasn't that bad when I pulled it apart.
Yep.
And I don't think it's because it's been sitting here.
No, I don't think it's had a cover on it the whole time.
Yeah.
So just
no, that's not from that. And that wouldn't leak anyway, you would have had oil everywhere.
Yeah.
So I'd say she's been leaking for a while.
Yeah, I'll get it up to CDA.
Yeah, no, pull it.
I might actually tip this diesel on the... According to the service manual, next steps, thermostat housing. Because this bolt in here is so hard to get to, I'm actually almost starting to think it's going to be easier to take the whole heat exchanger unit off. Looks like these are oil cooling lines from the gearbox to here. So, raw water hose, fresh water hose, oil hose is off. And I think we'll just unbolt the whole thing. Nice bit of seaweed. Still looks like there's green coolant in the freshwater system, so that's alright. I think there's a drain plug here at the bottom of what I believe to be an oil cooler maybe, don't quote me on that. I don't know these motors very well. This is the freshwater pump here, down through here and then up. I think I'll just leave that like that for now. So I think we just need the oil lines from the gearbox and we can start taking it off. I better just have a look if there's an obvious in or out for these. So here's the gearbox. So the hose here with the brass fitting coming from the top comes along and goes into the forwardmost fitting here. If I take this oil cooler off, I can get a straight shot at the mounting bolt behind here, which is tempting, or I could just take it off with a spanner and not touch it. Alright, I'll try and get a spanner on here for now. If not, I'm going to take the cooler off first. It's coming easy enough. Hey Rick, can you undo this last bolt while I take the weight of the heat exchanger? It's going to fall otherwise. Thank you, sir.
This one here.
Yeah. It's going to come off after that.
Pretty heavy, aren't they?
Yeah.
That's it. Hang on to it. Yeah. Hang on to it. Hang on to him. Nearly there. Oh, okay. You're loose. I'll put that bolt back in there. You're off.
Yeah. Oh man.
They're heavy, aren't they?
It's the only part of this motor that doesn't weigh a ton.
Hey, but they're all like that. That's the problem. I don't know whether it's GM or not.
Yeah,
My
true.
new GMs are pretty tough, but they all weigh a ton.
Yeah. Alright. We need to remove the governor cover so we can disconnect this fuel rod from both ends. So it looks like there's a bolt. Oh yeah, we can probably get that. Alright, let's just try and get that. Leave the solenoid attached to the bracket. I'll make a new bracket too, that's a shocker. It's all bent out of shape. Okay, this pin just drops into the fork there. So, got a little clip here, split pin here, so we can get this rod out. Okay. Put the clip back in the governor so we don't lose it. Sounds like we can remove this pipe as an assembly as a part of the removing the head. Yeah, we'll make it easier to get to some of the bolts. Okay, apparently this is an injector control tube in a past life. Now it's just a rusty mess. There's some instructions now that don't make a lot of sense to me, but they seem to have to do with these two end brackets. So I think we'll just take those off. They clearly go into the head, so we'll take these off both ends, and then it's just the main head bolts, as far as I can see anyway. We've taken the top two bolts out here because they go into the head, and the top two bolts here. Now that's all left is the main cylinder head bolts, which we'll take off in a bit of a reverse cycle. My socket's going to fit in there. Might have to take the injector pipes out first. Rocker assemblies off to get to these bolts, so undo these and we'll get it apart. Wound all the rockers off the push rods. Now I'm just undoing these bolts for the governor. Then I think we might be down to the main head bolts after that. Okay, undid two bolts at the bottom here, 4 down here, and then there's a fork here that goes up to the governor and actuates it in some way. I don't really know how it works, but it's now out of the way. Alright, get the impact gun, get these main bolts off, and then I don't know whether we're going to have anything joining here. I think it's just these bolts. These were definitely long enough to go into the cylinder head. Whether we're going to have too much friction here, I don't know, we'll try. Given it popped on this side, which is the push rod side, so I think that's why I did. At least it means the friction or corrosion is obviously broken at both ends because it came up. Just put a chain through it and see if it lifts. Looks like it's just hanging up on this bolt here, so I'm just going to back that one out a bit. Maybe the same here. Alright, it's off. It's not looking good, is it? Last night I was having a bit of a think about the Detroit diesel and going, this is a bit of a bummer, you know. Should I take this opportunity to replace it with something more efficient, all that kind of stuff. But I think I'm going to get this rebuilt. I think they're kind of interesting. Yes, they're a little bit fuel hungry, but we'll see how it goes. The other big thing to bear in mind is that when you repower a boat and you put a different type of motor in, a lot changes. So you kind of look at the cost of a new motor and you think, oh, that's not too bad. Then you look at all the costs and work associated with reconfiguring the boat to accept it, and it gets pretty big pretty fast. So I think I'm going to go see Kelvin today. Certainly take the cylinder head, see if he thinks it's savable, which it will be. It just means, getting some new parts, new cam followers, springs, get the valves done, all that kind of stuff. What I'm going to do though is, because I'm also going to have to get the block to, and the block's actually seized as well. I'm really at a bit of a loss for why it's so bad. Yeah, it's been sitting outside for a couple of months, but it's been under a cover the entire time. So I'm a little bit surprised, to be honest with you. Live and learn. Probably should have got it straight into a workshop somewhere in hindsight, but anyway. What I'm going to do now is just keep stripping stuff off the block so that I can get the block itself to Kelvin, who's the engineer I'm going to be using at CDA. So I think we'll try and get the gearbox off, the Jabsco, the starter motor, just all the sort of ancillary stuff that he's not going to have any interest in and is only going to make the block heavier. Alright, the Jabsco here is attached to a PTO. Looks like it runs off the end of the camshaft here. So let's get this unbolted. Bought a whole stack of slide lock bags last night so we can keep this stuff organised. Oh man, why so much rust? Alright, we'll get this pump back to the house to get it serviced. I'm not loving the location of the dipstick on these Detroit diesels. It might. Just going to take this remote fuel filter off now. Should probably get an oil pan. I haven't actually drained this yet, but just got this spanner wedged against the ground so I can get this one onto the join. None of my Imperial spanners were large enough, but these 30 and 32 seem to be working alright. Alright, let's have a crack at this gearbox. I'm presuming we just undo the plate here and that the gearbox is actually bolted from the inside onto the plate, is my guess. So I'll get the crane, we'll take the weight of the gearbox and then we'll start undoing the bolts, see what happens. It's not exactly the engine rebuild clean room with all this garnet everywhere. Anyway, we'll take it apart, get it up to the engineer, he'll do it all in his clean workshop, and then I'll just keep it on a crate somewhere safe until it's ready to be dropped back in. But to be honest with you, by the time I get it back, we should be ready to drop it straight in. Alright, I'm back from dropping the cylinder head off at the engine reconditioners now at CEA. We'll see what happens. They're going to get me some quotes on parts, and he said, look, I'll give it a some sort of caustic acid bath, whatever. And he said, look, it may actually not be anywhere near as bad as it looks right now, so that's cool. I'm not sure yet whether I'm going to do the block myself or give it to them to do. We'll see what the cost is and availability of parts, all that kind of stuff. But either way, I need to get this thing lightened and ready to go. So I'm going to continue trying to get this gearbox off. What I'm trying to do with the little engine crane is just jack it up enough so that the gap around the flange, maybe a bit too far, but is as even as possible to stop the spline from binding up. That should make it as easy as possible to pull it straight out. Not that it's going to be easy, but if it's bound up, you'll never get it out. Oh, and before I forget, this little engine disaster is going to cost quite a bit of cash, so I've put the Land Rover on carsales.com.au. If you want to buy it, go for it. Alright, let's get this little hatch off. Let us spray a little shifty bastard into it. See if it helps. Battle with this gearbox continues. When I put a bit of tension on the gearbox, pulling it with the truck, the whole block slides forward. So I've tied it off to a pile there. See how that goes. My money is on it's still moving forward, falling off the blocks, knocking the stand holding the boat, and the whole lot falling over. put 10 on it. That went about as well as could be expected, but the boat didn't fall over. Alright, engine's back on its blocks now. Gearbox is no further out. I'm starting to become of the opinion that corrosion is not your friend. Sweet. Check this out. Nice. That's the motto of Dango Marine: fun first, safety last. The bent tip of this pry bar is now quite close to the shaft, so by hammering it here you're obviously getting a reverse push on the gearbox, but instead of being peripheral it's much closer to the centre where the splines are. I'm hoping that's going to help. Also, I found that by letting the crane down, the gap opened up at the top. By putting the bar wedged in tight and then lifting it so that the crane made the gap parallel again, I can only presume it's putting quite a bit of force pushing it out as well. So, back from the hardware store now with a longer straight head crowbar so I can try a particular technique that I learnt during my apprenticeship. Doing this reminds me when I was at my mate's house the other night for dinner, and his daughter told me this joke. She's got to be, I don't know, 10, maybe less. And she said, "Oh, why'd the chicken cross the road?" "To visit the crap mechanic." I was like, "Oh yeah?" Then she said, "Knock knock." I go, "Who's there?" She goes, "It's the chicken." Oh, yeah, that was good for it. Alright, so we'll replace the oil seal here because there was loads of water in the oil for the gearbox. Check bearings, whatever. Give it the once over 2 while we're here. Nice bit of mud, oil, everything around the flywheel. Anyway, let's keep going. I just fired up the air compressor so I could use the impact gun to get these flywheel bolts off, but they're really close to the edge here. You can't even get a ring spanner on, let alone a thick-walled impact socket. So I think I'm going to have to try and get all these undone with an open-ended spanner. These bolts are way too far out to the edge to be how this bolts to the crankshaft. So I'm thinking this dampener's riveted to this plate is then bolted to the flywheel, then the flywheel's then bolted with centre bolts here to the crankshaft. So now we just got to figure out how we can separate this from the flywheel. Alright, let's get a bit of a wire brush onto it, see if we can see any edges. Seems most obvious on this one. See how you can see it's a plate and then it goes into thread. So I'm just going to lubricate this whole outer edge, brush the corrosion away, and see if we can pry it off. There you go. Well, at least everything's looking in good nick under here. That's good news. Man. So I think it's fair to say at some point in this boat's life, this motor's been underwater, you know. If you remember back to that really early video, the engine room was filling up because the bilge pump died. I don't think the boat's ever been underwater, but I definitely think the engine bay has been full of water up to a certain height at some point and done that. I know what this calls for. Step aside 4X. This is a job for Coopers. Alright, I think I might just get some heat in here, see if we can get this corrosion to crack. Oxygen's run out. I saw it was really low. Yeah. Oh, it's about par for the course. The lip on here has been designed with a taper so that you can't get any leverage on it. That's quite clever. Speaking of clever, in this section I forgot to turn the microphone on. So I was having a look, there's a couple of threaded holes in the flywheel that I presume are for pushing bolts into to pull the flywheel out, like with drum brakes for example. They were pretty manky, so I got a thread repair kit out and just cleaned the threads out. But then when I wound the bolts in after cleaning the threads out, they just started to strip once there was any force on the flywheel. They were just too far gone, so that meant that option wasn't possible. In the end though, I used the car once again just to put a little bit of tension on it and managed to wriggle it out, so that was fine. Then behind there you can just see the end of the crankshaft and the rear main seal, which we'll replace. Today I'm going to try and get one of the pistons out, so we'll just drain the fat out of it first. Looks like it's got a 1/2 inch female plug on the bottom, so I'll just loosen that first, then we'll slip the pan under. There was a little bit of water that came out first, but only a small amount, and the oil itself doesn't look that emulsified. My plan for getting the piston out is to move, hopefully now the engine will be light enough that I can lift it with the crane and actually drag the crane. If not, I'll try and tow the crane with the car maybe, get it out of this beach I'm sitting in at the moment, and lay it on its side so the supercharger's facing upwards. See if I can get the oil pan off, see if we can get a piston out. Well, that's not too bad. A good volume of reasonably black oil. I'll save this to put back in once it's fixed. plan now is to jack it up like this on the supercharger side, so that when I lower it, it'll roll onto the other side. The trolley crane will get wedged underneath it, but I've also got a trolley jack we can use to try and get it out, so we'll see how it goes. Alright, I'm pretty happy with that. After all this bashing around, we're probably going to need to find a new sump pan, but I've got a little bit of a lead for a whole spare part Detroit diesel, so that's alright. Okay, I reckon we just sap the sump pan off. Maybe I'll just beat it out, we'll see. See how much they are second hand or whatever. Bit of surface rust in the crankshaft. Oil strainer actually looks quite new and clean. Interesting. Wonder if it's had a new oil pump, which is our worst piston. Oh, and to answer a few questions about could I soak it? Don't know if you can quite see in there, probably not. These two pistons, the ones that are bad, I think are not coincidentally, they're below the point where the ports are open, so I can't fill them with oil. It just drains out through the ports, through the intake ports, and I think that's also what's caused the humid air or whatever to get in. Anyway, so this one, yeah, the hardest one to get to because the oil pump's in the way. Oh, actually it's not too bad. I might be able to... No, I should probably take it all off anyway, shouldn't we? What have we got to do? One there, one there, one there. Where does that go? That's all gears. They're together, I think. I think I'll try and get it off as kind of one unit if I can. These are the shims the service manual talks about making sure you don't lose, so we'll pop those both in the bag. I want to mark these for orientation and pairing and everything. So we need to know this is for cylinder 1 and it goes this way, not this way, etc. We'll clean that up and have a look at the bearing in a second. So the bolt end in goes to the exhaust manifold side of the engine. That'll be my convention. Alright, now can we get this piston out? It's not too bad actually. Gold. Check this out, hang on. I was thinking to myself, oh, that piston's sliding out really easily for the corroded one. It was just the liner coming out. Wow. Feels like it stopped about there, but it slid very easily out that far. Got a funny feeling I got some of these in my service kit. I'll have to go and check all the things I did get. Definitely had a new sump gasket, all sorts of stuff. I haven't shown you the box yet, but we do have some bits already. Anyway, let's get this all the way out. Here you can see much more easily now how the top of the piston here is just below the intake ports on this sleeve. So what happens with these two-strokes? I'll actually do a video on how these diesel two-strokes work, but the piston comes down. When it gets down below this level, it can't draw air itself, so that's where the supercharger pushes air in through these ports, and then the exhaust goes up through the valves at the top here. But it meant that if I filled this with oil, it was always just going to run out. What I'll do now is I'll go and grab some diesel in a jerry can, and I'll just soak this whole thing in a bucket of diesel, then hopefully we can get it apart. The engineer shop's going to pick this up on Monday, maybe next week. It's now Friday, and get working on it. The thing I really need to do is just find some cheap parts, but we'll see what we can do. Well, thanks for watching. I know a lot of people are going to be saying, no, don't spend less money fixing this motor, get something modern, efficient, quiet, whatever, but I'm going to do it anyway. The big challenge for me now is to find some cheap parts for this engine. You can get really good, affordable service kits in the US, but all up I think they weigh about 45 kilos, so I imagine sending it airmail is going to be hideously expensive, so that's probably where I'm going to have to end up buying locally. I don't know, we'll see how we go. But the engineering's actually not that expensive, the labour's not that bad, and I'll do a lot of it myself, but just need the parts. I've come this far, I figure I may as well put new parts in. There's no point, I think, sort of taking old second-hand parts and rebuilding this motor, only to end up doing it again down the track, so we'll see how we go. I'm now going to soak this piston in some kerosene and diesel just to see if I can get the piston out of the liner, which I'm sure will happen, won't be that hard. Then we can figure out whether we have one-piece or two-piece pistons and start getting these bits, you know, ordered. I also spoke to the engineer on the phone, and he's really happy for us to head out to CDA and do some filming in the workshop there and see what the process of, you know, getting the cylinder head fixed and the block done and everything is like. So I'm actually really looking forward to doing that part of the series as well. So we'll be going out there. It'll probably turn out I put it back together, but it'll be really good to see, you know, what their side of the process is like. All right, well, take care, and I'll catch you soon. See ya.